Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Two Ryans, One Planet podcast. This is now episode 4, and we've now got the lovely Jennifer Stirling-Campbell with us, who's going to go into a little bit more detail about mental health, including things like depression. So, Jennifer, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about what you do day to day and why you decided to set up your own podcast.
Day to day, my main focus is my family. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I also do a lot of things outside of that. I have milking goats. I sell milk on the black market. Don't tell anybody. It's raw. And we do. I do my podcast. That's taking a lot of time. And I teach trumpet lessons. I'm a musician. I volunteer in an orchestra and choir group. And that's the most of it, but I do a lot. It's just kind of, I like doing a lot of things, juggling a lot of things and not just doing one thing. It's how I've always been. So my focus when I was single, I'm now married, but was how can I feasibly stay home with my kids and make enough money to get by? And so I did all kinds of creative things and endeavors to make that work. And it ended up paying off, working out. Like I was always able to pretty much be home when my kids were home, and I picked up jobs at I was a wildland firefighter for a while. I was at the airport working, like I'd work 2 days, full days straight, sleep at the airport and come home. And so and then I work for a client of mine who I manage a website for her and do all of her fan mail.
Wow.
Amazing. So what made you want to start your podcast? What sort of sparked that motivation?
I've been thinking about it for 10 years, was scared out of my mind because I didn't like being in front of a camera. I felt very awkward, and who in the heck would listen to me? I've always been kind of the introverted person in the corner who, I could do a conversation with one or two people, but big groups of people, I was like, no, thanks. So really out of my comfort zone, and I convinced myself out of it so many times I can't even count. In fact, I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do with the information I had. I just knew that I felt called to bring it to the public in some way. And I was like, should I sell it as a program? And that never felt right. And so basically, I felt inspired to build a program essentially that would lead people through a process that they could overcome depression in a podcast form, because it's free to anybody who wants to listen. And then if they want to have more one-on-one help, I do sessions with people as well. Forgot to mention that. I do sessions on Zoom. My favorite thing to do is to look at people's natal charts, because I'm trained as an astrologer. I'm a Christian astrologer, which is kind of rare. And so I like to look at charts because a lot of people who are depressed, they're lying to themselves. They're just in a state of they can't see truth from error, and they're just kind of a mess. So if I can look at somebody's chart, it gives me a sneak peek into, oh, okay, where maybe your blocks are, and I can see into where all of your amazing gifts are that you're not even recognizing because you're so low. You can't even see your worth. Mm-hmm. And so my clients usually leave a session feeling, at least by my esteem, like I can tell they leave very hopeful and excited that I can see these things in them that they couldn't see before. Mm-hmm. And so that's what makes what I do kind of fun. But I also sell a workbook that goes along with the program. So I'm hoping that someday I'll be able to sell these workbooks and make a little bit of money while I'm doing a free podcast. We'll see. But that's kind of the goal, because the workbook can basically take all of this information that I'm throwing out there and put it into a digestible format where people can open the book and journal and go kind of through the process in a way that's more organized than just here's a bunch of information that you're hearing on a podcast.
It sounds like you just generally care for people to do this and put this much time and effort and doing it for free. I mean, therapists and people selling books and doing sessions, they usually charge quite a bit of money and make quite a lot from it.
Yeah, and the people that who helped me overcome depression charged very little or nothing at all, because I had no money. At the time, I was just so poor, and I just couldn't justify, I knew what counselors could do for me, which was talk therapy, but it didn't change the way I felt. I was still depressed. So it felt like a waste of money. Not that it is. It's just for me, I was like, why spend $150 every week when, it's not changing my actions. It's not changing my reactions. It's not changing the way I feel. And so therefore I cannot change. Knowing the psychology did not help me change.
Mm-hmm. What?
It just didn't. I was still a little depressed, still mean.
What would you say helped?
I hated it. I hated being. Huh?
What would you say helped you get through it?
It was, well, first it was diet. Believe it or not, I didn't believe natural cures could do anything for me because I tried taking fish oil before, but I don't think I was taking enough, to be honest. I was just like trying different things and was like, it doesn't work. And I was very much on the Western medicine train of this is just how it is. This is what I need. Prozac. Yay, and it really does have some negative side effects I couldn't recommend unless someone's in such dire straits that they can't function or they're hurting the people around them, which was kind of the case for me. I was making the lives of the people around me miserable. And so I felt like I owed it to them to take the Prozac because it calmed me down. But ultimately, when I realized steak, and that whole story is in a podcast, How to Eat Depression, is my second one. But basically, I found out by mistake that eating fish 3 days a week could replace the Prozac. I no longer needed it. And I read later, after this miracle occurred, when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm feeling fine and I don't need to go get my drugs. Oh my gosh, because I'd heard this could help, but I just did it as a health kick. Like, oh, that sounds healthy. And so I was overdosing on omega-3s and eating nuts and seeds and fish and all these things. And later learned from some studies that it takes 3 months for those kind of oils to start accumulating in your system to make a difference in your brain, because your brain's 60% fat. You need these healthy fats. And what are we giving ourselves? We're giving ourselves omega-6s. I'm not sure what it's like in the UK exactly, but in America, we get something like 25 times more of these plastic omega-6s as we when we need the omega-3s, and we're getting all these like 25 times more than we need. And those oils make you depressed because they're like plastic. They accumulate in the body. They don't process, they store. And so you can imagine what that's doing to your brain. Like, these oils are not food. Like I said it again, like I'll say it again, they are a plastic. Like margarine, seed oils, refined, the canola and vegetable and all these oils that basically most of the food in the grocery store, if it's processed in any way, shape, or form, has these oils in it, from bread to anything. And so for me, at first it was fish, and that's all I really needed to stay off of the Prozac. And then when I realized that was working, my whole mindset changed. I was like, if this works, what else can I do? And I was like, nature's it. Like, nature is it. Back to nature. And took me till 25 to figure this out. And granted, as a child, I loved animals. I started an animal club when I was like 9, 10. And I went to PetSmart and bought this little conservation packet that meant I owned part of a whale, adopted this whale. So I really loved animals, had a lot of them growing up, had a soft spot there. But I didn't make the correlation to how we treat the planet and the animals affects us so much. Like, when I realized that correlation, the selfish side of me was like, oh, we need to do something. It was so much more urgent then, when I realized how much the way that society has turned against nature in so many ways is affecting society at large. My kids, I'm very protective of my kids, the things they're eating, and my teenagers, I can't control what they eat anymore. But my baby, I haven't even let him have stuff. He has, with the exception of he got a hold of some goat cookies, like that I give to the goats. With the exception of that, he has never had sugar. And he eats so well, and he's a really healthy kid. That's hard to do. That's really hard to do in this society. You almost have to no daycare, because it's everywhere. But I feel like with my healing, because I feel like when you heal, it kind of goes forwards and backwards. Not kind of. It's like your kids heal along with you. and whatever DNA you inherited starts to change. And so my older kids don't seem to struggle with depression like I did. My youngest definitely doesn't, but I've also taught them a lot of the tools that I've learned over the years that has helped me. And so the amount of toxic overload that they've had through food and whatnot has been less than I was ever exposed to, I think. I mean, we're more toxic than we were when I was growing up, but as a general rule, I've worked really hard at filling the home with things that are nourishing and healthy options, and not even having the other options really available. So
I think I agree. Like, I know they say that the gut and the stomach, it's like the second brain. Like, quite a lot of your mood and your temperament is controlled actually by your stomach and how connected they are. And I try to eat really healthy. I think I go a bit over the top with my diet. But anytime you have like processed food, I think it's like a zombifying. Sometimes you can have like a naughty food and you're like, oh, that was nice. But that process, you eat like a processed food and you just feel bad afterwards. I remember I went to a concert last year and I was really hungry because to get to the concert, you got to do 2 hours of traveling before. And then you're there for, then you're for the warm up person and you're watching the thing and then it's going to be another 2 hours to get home. But I'm hungry. The people at the concert don't let you bring in food and water with you. So I had no other option to eat this plastic hot dog. And I was just sitting there like, I ate it.
I was there yesterday. I needed something and I was like, it's got to be a burger today, But
like you can actually make your own burger like with natural foods, and it just tastes so much better as well when you make it yourself. You can, and I've just like agree like with society, and that's what I wonder about depression, because you talked about nature, and nature for me just. When I'm in nature, I'm who I'm meant to be. And I was listening to your podcast and you said about being born depressed. And I found that really interesting. Like, if you know what I'm saying, like your mother couldn't work out, why you was that way. And I just wonder if that's like a society thing that everybody else is so drummed into society and we play the character what society tells us to be, and I think you mentioned that as well. I knew how I had to act in certain circumstances, and like I feel like that as well. Like I go into the wild, I just want to be out in Africa with lions and wild camping and swimming with killer whales. That's who I am. But I have to go into the shops and I have to go to parties and I talk to people, and I'm very much. Within my circle of my family and, when I go on dates and things like that, I find it hard to get into that world of other people. I don't have a TV. You can see the music behind me. I just listen to music and I just want to be outside all the time. But do you think where a lot of people are suffering is because people are trying to, as a child, you have these dreams, right? Some people want to be an astronaut. Someone wants to be, a cowboy. And so the society comes along and says, actually, you have to do this and you have to be like this.
Certainly.
And a few of us that carry on and keep our dream alive, like Ryan as well and myself, we just carried on wanting to be with wildlife. But society starts chipping away, and suddenly you become, I don't get out of bed in the morning anymore. And
yeah, I think there's definitely a collective energy where our society at large is very sick. And so that alone can like feel it, right? I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are suffering, and we're taught our whole lives how to be and what to choose. And, and our parents, dear parents, they meant well, but I think most parents try to the way they wanted to be parented or that, their best efforts at doing so. And I think it took me a long time to realize that not everybody's like me. In fact, a very, very tiny percentage of the population is like me. And like my personality profile, if you will, is like less than 1%. So it's very rare. My husband has that too. So we get each other. So that's awesome. But if you're trying to parent out these things that you see as negative, when really they just need to be redirected, certain traits in the child, or they have a will of their own and a purpose. I mean, I can see that from a chart, right? That is not like their parents. Or if you look at human design and how you operate, where you get your energy from versus somebody else, it's going to look entirely different. Where intuition is kind of downplayed in our society. It's all about facts and science and proof. And if you're going that route, it can be very imbalancing because you're doing what you've been, told, or even research has shown, but research hasn't shown that everything to work for you. And if you can't tune into that higher power and be directed by that and stop listening to the chatter and the chaos, it's very easy to become imbalanced very quickly. Or do you think you're supposed to go that way when God's like, no, over here? And until you figure out that, that way that everybody was saying not to go is what I'm supposed to do. And God's like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you. And then you feel that light and that peace, right? But that it's that peace that needs to be fueling us and directing us, that's why meditation can be so helpful for a lot of people, because it's like quieting that mind or the gut, because they communicate. But those temporal desires, I would think from the gut, like I'm hungry, I need this, I need that. Those the desire to have whatever it is we want in that given moment. That's the body speaking. That's not the spirit speaking. And then we have the brain that's full of thoughts that have been put into our head. When a person dies, do they leave their brain behind? Like the spirit is what knows, but rarely we're taught almost not to listen to it anymore. And in the school system, even by well-intentioned parents. So that's not a good idea. When the child's like, but I feel it in my soul. Like, this is good. I'm supposed to go this way, but they don't understand it. And so I think where there's that disconnect and, well, I guess I shouldn't listen to that, or I guess that's not a good idea after all. And you go that way, where that conflict of who you are, what your will, your purpose is versus where you think you're supposed to go. And there causes this confusion inside of you. And so that's, I think, where depression can start. There's a lot of ways that again, I think it was a lot of ancestral issues that didn't get reconciled, and I inherited it, and I think that can be a great gift that you can give back to your family, is overcoming the things they couldn't and passing that on to the posterity that comes after. It's not an easy thing. And I think a lot of people who endure terrific struggle, especially, you think of abuse and trauma and all of those things. We know that some of the greatest artists that ever were or ever will be came from those circumstances. I think Tony Robbins came from horrific circumstances. But most of the people who were in those horrific circumstances grow up and they have horrific mental illness and they struggle tremendously. And so of all the people that had those struggles, it's the one, there's some that choose or they're resilient, and then there's a lot that just struggle and they suffer. And I don't think that anyone has to suffer forever. And that's what I'm hoping to offer through this podcast, is tools and ideas and hope that anybody can heal. I think what made some of these people different is that they had the tools inside them to begin with. Like that's who they were, and nothing could really splot it out. Where with me, I had a lot of lies I confessed that were very stubborn leaving in, that I had to let go of. And a lot of it took quite a beating. Like, it took breaking my heart into a million pieces and letting God put me back together again. Is that necessary for everyone? I don't know. I don't know what that would look like for any given person. That's what it took for me. But I'm extremely stubborn. And so the way to healing is going to be different for everyone. The principles are the same. It really comes down to a moment of decision and surrender. And that's it. What that looks like is going to be different, though.
And what I'm curious about, because you mentioned nature before, and it sounds great. You have goats. Like, I love goats. But you said you have goats, and I was just wondering how much of a factor of nature plays into this, because I was thinking it's quite a lot. So, I'm stuck in a town, And I want to be in the wild. I'm guessing, Ryan, you want to be in the wild as well. It's like it's who we are. We're born to be wild, if you want to quote the song. And then we have to change who we are. And I have things, and I'll go through like OCD things and stuff like that, and struggle.
I can relate.
And then and it's really hard to not to do it. The one thing people say to you when you got like an OCD tick is just don't do it. It's in your head. But I was in Norway last month, swimming the orcas, and it was completely gone. I was not depressed. There was no anxiety, and I was completely free. And then I thought about when I was in Africa, or when I go on a hike with my dog somewhere, and I can just hear the birds, and I'm completely aware, and I feel really at peace. The first thing I do is when I go somewhere is I kneel down and I put my hand on the ground, and I can feel the earth. It sounds crazy, but I can feel the earth moving. And I thought it was just me.
It doesn't sound crazy. Sounds like a gift to me. A beautiful gift.
Thank you. But when I hear the other people, when they're seeing these animals or they're seeing these beautiful landscapes or sunsets, and you see them become at one, I thought, am I the only one who's aware of this? Does nature, is it going to help other people who are suffering with anxiety or depression?
Oh, for sure. I think that going back to nature is everything. I mean, 100%. Because when you're out of alignment, you're going against natural law. When you have chemicals in the house that aren't natural, it's going to put overloads on your body system, stress that doesn't necessarily exist out in nature. Grounding is a thing. We put on these shoes and we don't get any of the benefits from the planet Earth. And one of the biggest ones I think right now in society at large is Wi-Fi, EMFs. Like it's a lot of interference that blocks or just messes with our systems in ways that we still don't completely understand. There's a lot of, I've watched some seminars, doctors about this phenomenon, but we really got kind of in over our heads very quickly because, I'm sure because it's useful for one, and because it's a good money maker, but there hasn't been a lot of studies done on what these EMFs do to our bodies or our minds, our brains. And so that was the answer to me when I wasn't getting pregnant was it's the EMFs, darling. And it took me a while to figure that out. Once I got some EMF neutralizing devices and put them all over the place, and I got pregnant in a week. So like that should tell you how much they interfere with at least my hormones. But definitely just when we're going against nature, there's chaos. It starts to decreate nature, allowing nature, being coherent with nature, working with nature. All of those things are what bring harmony within ourselves and the planet. I think you mentioned a burger, so I'm guessing you're not a vegetarian. No. Okay, I was like, am I talking to vegetarians who would be really sad if I ate a burger? So I'm wondering. So you clearly understand the principle that we're part of the food chain.
Yes.
It's just when we abuse it that it gets out of balance. And that's with anything. When you have inorganic food, for example, inorganic meats have a really high ratio of omega-6s because they're fed all this grain that fattens them up, and the meat tastes delicious because it's full of all this marbling fat. But if you eat a lean, organically fed cow, grass-fed its whole life, the meat probably won't be as tasty, but it's got omega-3s that are in perfect balance with the omega-6s. And so eating even just organic meat just to change the makeup of your body and because you want those omega-3s. You don't want anything that's not natural is going to put stress on your body. So 100%, I agree. Back to nature is kind of where we need to be. And like if everything in our home was not made of plastic, I mean, a lot of the homes I think that burned in California, I'm not sure how old they were, but I was a firefighter for a while, learned that, yes, there's laws that you have to have these flame retardants and stuff that we all know are chemicals that are hell. Before that, these old homes that were made of wood, they would take like half hour maybe to burn, or maybe several hours, depending on the how big the fire was. And so a firefighter had time to go in and try to put it out or save the people inside. Well, today's fires because most of the things in the houses are made of petroleum products, including all of the glues that are in the woods that are cheap, so forth. They burn very hot, very fast. And so the flame retardants are not even as good as things were when they made more natural houses. What would happen if all of the products we had in our houses were natural? We'd be walking around on our carpet of natural fibers, and we would be getting that healing power of the planet, that grounding power that we don't get because of all the synthetic things that are blocking us from it. So even in our own house, it's just like we're in this little cocoon of synthetics. And imagine it's very unnatural. So if I was ever to build my own house, I would do it very differently, and it would probably be very small and very expensive for a very small house because doing things naturally tends to cost a lot more, unless you're out in the middle of nowhere and doing it yourself, chopping down your trees. I suppose you could do that. I'm sure there's other ways to do it too. I know there's many, many ways to build houses that we don't do. We just kind of do the same thing because that's what you do, and it's cheap and effective at making a lot of money quickly. I'm not blaming anyone for doing that. But if we want to heal, we have to go back to nature.
I agree. Do you feel sometimes like you're living in a Lego set? Like I feel like I'm in a Lego house, and
I avoid that.
Real.
Yeah, most of the houses here are cookie cutter. They all look the same. Every neighborhood looks pretty much the same. They're these stucco things, and they are ugly. I mean, I think they're ugly, like hideously ugly. Most people want them around here. I don't know, but like I get lost in every neighborhood. I can never, because they all look the same. And so my goal was to find an old house that had a little bit of land. It's out by the reservation, so they'll never be able to build out there. So at least I've got this little hill over here and nature over there and some trails. And it's just big enough I can have my goats, and my husband can have his business. He has a landscaping business. He does like edible landscaping. So that's kind of the focus of his business, which is kind of cool. Getting back to nature. He loves it too. But yeah, for sure. There's just a lot of the designs of the cities. I feel like Europe's better. Like they have that classical, they have a lot of history there, whereas the West in particular is still growing, but they're building everything and it all just kind of looks the same. Any city you go to, it looks the same. They have the same stores, the same construction. It's boring. There's not a lot of art.
The one place that I think,
and I think that's another thing we've lost, is this creative.
I think the one place I think is doing it good in nature. It's still very like modern, but I think in Singapore they're now doing like their buildings, but they're putting plants and like beehives and everything. Yeah. They're trying to get it connected to nature, because even here in like UK, I'm not sure how you see in America. You do have these beautiful little villages out in the nature, and you drive past and you're like, oh, this is nice. But then you come back to your town and it's, I'm sure the person who designed the towns of UK only had the color grey on their paint and just painted everything grey, and it just feels so like, for me, it doesn't feel like I'm in a real place. And I think it also affects sleep. Like I have a lot of energy. I can't stop, and I struggle to sleep constantly. And I can go from 4 a.m. working hard, and come midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm still like, I can't sleep, and I'm still tired. I can't sleep. But when I'm wild camping, like people said to me, oh, when you go traveling to Africa, go and stay in a hotel. It's like, no, I want to go in a tent. I want to sleep on the ground. Yeah. I still got up at 4 a.m., but I got woken up by a zebra, and I went through to midnight the next night. But I got into my tent and I was like, okay, boom, I was gone. I was asleep. I felt so good. And even if I had 4, 5, 6 hours sleep, I woke up feeling fresh. And, I up in the tent, you're having a drink, and it just, I could breathe. That's what I can like feel it is. Have you gone swimming and you've gone really deep underwater and you're trying to get to the surface and you got that last 20 seconds of holding your breath?
Yeah.
But when I'm out there, I'm like, I can breathe. Where here, I'm constantly struggling to breathe. I feel it's a struggle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, have you considered moving out of the city for real?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, why not? Like, you totally could. And if in the meantime you could try getting some of those grounding mats, go get out. One of the best things for sleep that I know of is getting outside and letting the sunlight touch your eyes. You're not looking directly at the sun, but you're getting that infrared first thing in the morning, like as soon as the sun starts coming up. You're outside, and you have to do it within 30 minutes of waking up. So you can't wait too long. And then it gets that circadian rhythm going, and it tells your body, oh, it's morning. Whereas we don't get that when we're inside for hours, for the first several hours of the day. Our body can't get that message because it's not getting the sunlight. The light inside doesn't do that. It will mess with you, though, the lights inside. So when I wake up in the morning now, I leave all the lights out, and I do my best to get outside within 30 minutes and let that sunlight hit my eyes. And that does help. That's supposed to help with sleep a lot. And it would help if I could see your chart, because then I could see what kind of person you are that would need certain things to have good sleep. Like there's different people that need different things, but I've heard it said that one thing that I just described is the most important thing you can do for your health, according to some people, like that they feel strongly enough about that. So that's actually why I got the goats, for the milk, the raw milk, so that I could benefit from that. My child could benefit from that. I make goat milk kefir, so it's a probiotic. And then because I had to go outside every day, I can't not, because they have to be milked. So it encourages me out the door every morning. And I think that's something, and because it takes me a long time out there, it's also an opportunity for my little to be outside for a good hour every morning. And where I'm not like, okay, sorry, we gotta go in, I'm busy. Like I have to be out there. So I almost do that as a necessary thing that I have to do. If I didn't, they would be really sad and in a lot of pain. So
where would you say in terms of mental health, in terms of like human history, where it sort of started? Has mental health in humans always been a thing, or is it sort of when we started to create our societies? When do you think it actually sort of physically started?
I think back in the day when we had to survive, just as a human race, it was more about survival. People weren't worried about mental health as much. They just did what they had to do. I'm not saying it didn't exist. I'm sure it did exist 100%. But I think that most people just they weren't thinking about it. They didn't have that kind of time or energy. They were thinking about getting food on the table or protecting their child. I mean, how many you hear about women in even just the 1800s that lost how many kids? Like half of them or more. That was just normal. And yet every person out there wasn't depressed. They went on. They lived life. They did what they had to do. So I think it could be a lot of things. I think in our society, it's too many things to think about that don't really matter. Just taxes, just like all the stuff we have to think about just to survive in this society. It's good. And then again, too much time where our brains are just, because we're not engaged in meaningful work that we find meaningful, that we're not using our bodies as much as we used to. I know in terms of women, there was a really big shift during World War II, I think, where the women started going into the workforce, right? And the men were gone. Well, when the men came back, most of the women went back home, and suddenly they didn't, there was all this industrial stuff going on, so that all the things they used to do, like make pies or sew, all the things that were valued in society prior to the Industrial Revolution even, were no longer needed. And so these women were at home without any value in terms of things that they had to offer that people wanted. And even though, of course, it's important to, motherhood alone isn't a really important thing, but the women didn't feel like they were contributing to society at all. And so it became very difficult. And a lot of, I think, alcoholism and depression set in during that time. My grandmother struggled big time with depression and alcoholism. So I think that played a role. I think any time, again, that you move against nature or you turn to the dark, that starts to create chaos, which results in mental stress, which results in eventual, if it goes on long enough, it becomes chronic. So, and the very short answer to that is turn to the light, do the thing that you feel like something inside of you is telling you to do, versus doing things because you're scared. Because if you move towards something or away from something because you're scared, that's the wrong reason, and it's going to throw you out of balance. Like there's something that doesn't want you to do something. So in other words, when I'm scared, I move closer. I'm like, what is this? What is this something that someone on the other side doesn't want me to do? Because clearly it wouldn't matter. Like, I wouldn't be scared if I wasn't supposed to do it. Now there's different than a warning, of course. Like you don't get close to the edge of a cliff and jump off and say, oh, I'll be fine, when you're supposed to be, cautious of those sort of things. But I'm talking like someone invites you to, give a speech and you're like, oh no, I'm scared. Maybe if you're scared, do it, is kind of my attitude.
Yeah.
And if you're,
What do you sort of have in terms of the value on like sort of social media? Because I know for me, for many years, I've always used social media like LinkedIn and Facebook for sort of connecting with zoologists, conservationists, and I've used it in a way that allows me to get out there, and that's how I sort of met with Ryan himself and stuff like that. And that's how we connected.
Yeah.
But I know the other side to social media, and I think the sort of turn of the century where sort of social media started to come in more like Facebook and iPhones and all this sort of stuff. Sort of mental health just went completely down, and obviously there is a link between mental health and social media. But what would you say to people who are trying to disconnect from that? What would you advise for them?
Yeah, it'd have to be pretty intentional. I pretty much disconnected from social media for years, where I would just go on to maybe post a picture of family or something so other family could see it. But then when I started the podcast, I was trying to just not do social media, and was like, rude awakening, you kind of need to if you want people to know that you have a podcast. So I tried to find that balance for a while, and eventually I've gotten to the point where I don't do a lot of interaction. Because I'm part of what is that the more social media you engage in, the more depressed you will be. There's studies that correlates. It's very, very just kind of black and white there. So I pretty much go in, make my posts, respond to people's comments, and then hitchhike out of there as fast as I can, because the algorithms are just so good at reeling you in, right? So if you do social media or you want to stay connected, you want to be able to reach out to, you could do it where you give yourself so many minutes a day, you set a timer, and that's it. Like you put it down, you exit out, that's all. That's done for the day, but it has to be intentional or you will get sucked in. And I would say definitely don't even think about social media for the first 3 hours of the day. Just don't touch it. And for the first 2 hours at the end of the day. So social media will give you false dopamine hits that you can get by going out and looking at the sun for a second, for 5 minutes, that are not real. As soon as you stop doing it, it stops. Those dopamine hits no longer are there. Whereas the sunlight that you get in the morning can last all day. So if you're accustomed to waking up, scrolling right away, that would be the first thing I would divorce, is just at least wait 3 hours before you turn it on, and don't do it
It's
after.
I need to do. It's definitely one thing I need to do. I know that for sure.
I would say probably most of the people in this, in the world we live in, do look at their phone the first 5 minutes of the day, if not the first thing.
I mean, to be fair, the sort of, obviously being a scientist myself, and obviously mainly animals, not sort of human health and stuff like that. But when you touch on about health and diet, I think that's quite a big thing, because for example, myself and my partner for the last month, we've ditched drinking Coke or Pepsi and chocolate and crisps and any sort of processed food and takeaways. And to be fair, straight away within the first even the first week even, we had so much more energy, and I've already started to lose a bit of weight in my face and stuff like that. But you just wake up so much more energized. And we went out for a meal about a week ago, and we had the meal, and we woke up the next morning. We felt bloated and really out of sync again. And it was just, we instantly said it's because we went out and had like a takeaway rather than cooking food at home and feeling fuller for longer, and eating a balanced diet, which I think, which you touched on is key.
I think the same can work for social media, like you said, like not looking at the first thing in the morning. Like people are addicted, and what I worry is, like we're saying about getting back to nature, people miss it. I'm really good as a wildlife guy. When I go out there, I spot everything, but I'm nobody special. Okay, I think I've got something what I can. But one of the guys I was traveling with, I was the first one to spot orcas. I was the first one to see the northern lights. I was the first, but the reason why, okay, I'm looking for it, but I'm not on my phone like this where everyone else was. When I traveled, if you're paying me to go and travel somewhere and I have to use social media to promote a safari, then fine, I have to do it. But if I'm doing it purely as a tourist because I really want to see it, I'm not paying my phone company to pay for extra data so I can use it. I turn it off. I traveled over Christmas. I said to my family, I'm not talking to you on Christmas Day. I'm gone. I'm in the Arctic. I'm with orcas. Bye-bye. As soon as I leave Heathrow Airport, I'm gone. Bye-bye. I'll see you when I come back. And it felt so good. And not just for social media, but I had no idea what's happening in the world. I didn't know what's going on with the wars or what celebrities done this. I had no idea. And it felt like taking a weight off my shoulder,
like when it's not even there and you can't grab for it. Completely agree. I do take it with me when I go places in case I break down or whatnot, but I pretty much gotten in the habit of it sits on my table at home. I don't carry it around with me. It stays there. If I go outside, it stays on the table, and I'll call someone back if they call me when I get back and I check it. I'll check it maybe every few hours. I can't. The other thing I did, which may or may not be possible for certain people, but I turned off pretty much all the notifications. There's no binging or ringing except for my phone. Like if someone calls me, it'll ring, but all my text notifications are off, because every time you get one of those notifications, I noticed my body would go, like it's just causing like some kind of stress or even a dopamine hit. Like, oh, someone texted me, and it gives these hits. Where if you just turn it off and you're not getting those, it's just a lot more peaceful, and you just have to train yourself to check the thing throughout the day. So that's one thing that I've done to make my life less chaotic, is to distance myself from the phone. And sometimes people get frustrated because they can't get a hold of me, but they know they'll have the best chance if they call, and so forth. So just kind of what it is. We don't live in a society where the phone has a answering machine and it's stuck to the wall anymore. So if you want to create that, you just have to create it.
One of the questions comes up quite a lot for us is, what's your ideal date? Mine's quite dopey, but it's really gone back to nature. It's very expensive as well, but would be to be in the Serengeti in Africa, just me and the girl in the open top truck, drive around, look at the animals, and then come to like nighttime, which is about 6 o'clock there, it gets dark. And the stars is just out of this world. You can see them. You can see the Milky Way, and it's just mind blowing. And just have a fire, and I just sit there with a rug. There's gonna be hyenas, so it's gonna make me look extra tough because I got my arm around the girl protecting her, and that's my ideal date. And I think a lot of people are missing the nature thing. I remember I was at Heathrow Airport and I was traveling by myself, just drinking a tea, and there was a young couple in front of me. And they were taking about 500 selfies together for about 15 minutes, taking photos and photos with the champagne and with the food. And I thought, this is so cute. And they stopped taking the photos, and the two of them just disappeared, and they both just picked up their phone. And until I had to leave to board my plane, they were just constantly on their phone. And I thought, this is so weird. Like, they're doing a photo session just for social media, where it was me. I want to kiss the girl and like talk to her. We're going on a holiday. I don't know where they're going, and it just feels strange for me that people's relationships are so into social media, where I really feel like I'm missing the sunsets.
It's an appearance thing. You want to come off as a certain way or make it look a certain way. You can make it look perfect, right, on social media. I'm kind of got to the point where even when it comes to picture taking of my 2-year-old, like I love taking pictures of him. He's so cute, but I also don't hesitate to leave my phone so that I'm not tempted to use it and just live in the moment with him and not worry about taking pictures. It's here in my mind, and I can journal about it or whatnot, but you don't have to take a picture of everything, because if you are, you're not living. You're just pretending that you have a life that you wish you had is kind of the way I see it. And maybe that's harsh. I'm sure that's not every person, but social media can be very deceptive on both ends. It can trick you into thinking you have a life better than you have, and trick other people into thinking you have a life better than you have, and make them feel bad because they don't have a life as good. It's kind of messes with you.
When I was in Africa filming in 2017, I think it was now, and I remember filming a full lion hunt, which is something you don't normally see. Obviously, you see it on documentaries, but you don't realise how long it takes to capture something like that. And I just remember, although obviously it's not a phone, but I was looking down the lens of the camera filming this hunt, and there was a thing in me that sort of said, "Look above the camera." So, like, although I was moving the camera, thinking I was moving the camera towards the action, I was physically watching the hunt itself, and that's something you can't sort of grasp again going through like a lens, because obviously you're looking down, you're concentrating, you're not really taking it all in, you're not listening to the sound, you're just trying to get all the footage. And I'm just so glad that I did something like that to witness something like that, because I might never ever see something like that again in my lifetime. You just never know. But I think that, like you say, the value of taking your step away from your phone. Like, I've seen so many people on tours in Africa when I used to work at Safari Park and stuff like that. It was just constant camera. I'm like, I felt like saying, just drop the camera, just watch with your eyes, because that's your camera, not everything else. These are your cameras, these are your lenses. You'll have these memories for life if you watch and look.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something we brought up was really important. Like something I noticed as well. I don't know, you might have seen videos from my orca trip of the orcas, but I've got about 3 videos of orcas because I took my GoPro out, I think, once. I was out there for 7 days. I took it once, and even though there's orcas everywhere, my footage is so terrible because I'm not like that. I'm not orcas. My hands going everywhere like this, excited. So the footage I've got, I just put the camera, I switch it on, and I just leave it on. I don't, and I don't focus. I'm not a cameraman, but I'm so excited to see these animals that the footage I have got is just luck where the orcas happen to swim past the camera, because I'm looking through the eyes. And I think even my guide out there, he said to everybody who were tourists, he says, guys, bring your cameras, but what I recommend is come to days without your cameras and you'll appreciate it more. And I think that applies for everything, even concerts. So many people, you go to a concert and everyone's just, I'm like, just jump around to the music and
right.
I think they have their phones on constant. They might as well. They just film the whole thing. They don't watch it. They film it.
Yeah.
They don't watch it.
Yeah, because I can watch it again, but you can watch somebody else's version that they've took, because other people are doing the same thing. So you can watch it with your eyes and then go find YouTube video of whoever did it.
What do you think?
Intentional camera use is the way to go. Like there's times when I'm like, I'm going to take some cute pictures of my son today. He looks adorable. And I get the phone out for 10 minutes and then I'm done. Like I don't try to take pictures all the time. And I think you can do that in most scenarios where like picture time and then put it away.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the sort of reason humans in general when it comes to society? Why do you think we are so obsessed with gaining the latest information, seeing what the next celebrity is doing? What is it that when we get up in the morning we go straight onto the phone? What is it that we are sort of getting to? What is it?
I want to say, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of us don't feel like our lives are what we want. We think we should be having a different experience, or we want a different experience. And so watching other people and living through them allows us this vicarious experience of living someone else's life, which I think is so sad, because I think every single one of us has a life worth living, and an interesting life, and a mind that's unlike anyone else's. And if you're constantly looking for those distractions from the life you're living instead of creating what you want, like just say, I think when I was depressed, I did not like my life. I hated myself and I didn't enjoy being in my own body. But I also refused to constantly distract myself with other people's lives, I suppose, or, vicariously, like we were talking about, through either news or media or celebrities. I was not into that. My focus, and I'm not sure if it's necessarily better, but it was in forcing myself to do incredibly hard things to prove that I had worth.
Mhm.
And it made me feel alive. Like if I was in pain from running a cross-country race, for example, that was like, I'm doing the best I can, even though I can't defeat this depression thing right now. I can move my legs as fast as they possibly will go and beat a bunch of people and feel like I accomplished something today. So that's how I handled it. And I feel like that's at least a mentality of I'm doing something with my life. I am trying to be better, even if it wasn't routed properly at the time. Was a better use of energy than just drowning in other people's stuff through social media or otherwise.
But that makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense, yeah.
I was able to relate to that quite a bit.
And the AI aspect is kind of scary. I don't know how much you've looked into that, but the artificial boyfriends and girlfriends, and I think some celebrities are creating artificial versions of themselves that people can talk to.
Oh, that's
and then they feel like they have a relation with them. It's like real though. Like they form this connection with something that's not real, and I can't think of anything more unhealthy than that. Personally,
I think it's a very dangerous.
To me, to yourself, this AI likes you or something.
Well, I saw. I think it was like last year or the year before. There was like an AI Santa that kids can send letters to and stuff like. I just think AI is a very, if it's not used correctly, I think it can be a very, very dangerous way.
Yeah, agreed. It's a slippery slope. It can be used for great good. It's like anything. I mean, any good thing can be used for good or evil. It's just across the board, whether it's religion or power or the nuclear bomb. It's just it's kind of the nature of it. Or you read Harry Potter and the powers that they had that could be used for great good or great evil, and the balance there. So I love Harry Potter. I love Bellatrix. I love everything she says. I love her books. So yeah, big fan.
Yeah, if she's listening, thank you. I'm currently reading the books again at the moment. It's a really nice way for escapism. I even use Harry Potter in my presentations. So like when I have a snake, I have the glasses on and I speak in parcel tongue.
It sounds daft though, but like even like just picking up a book and going back to the old ways of reading books. I mean, you can just get so much information, so much joy from reading. I mean, I've got loads of science books. I know it's been a while since I've picked all them science books up, but I do read a lot of stuff where it's like journeys of like a wildlife cameraman or a presenter, and you sort of go on the journey with them, and you experience all these amazing things, and you just think, I wish I was there. And it's just, it brings your imagination alive. Well, I think, like you say, constantly having your phone in your hand, you're sort of so distracted. I mean, you can literally sit on social media and like an hour has just disappeared when you could have read a couple of chapters of a Harry Potter book or Lord of the Rings or whatever, or one of your science books or anything like that. It's just, you don't realize how much time.
Yeah. Like, do you really want to get to the end of your life and see how much time you spent on social media and go, wow, I'm so glad.
People, I think it'd be like maybe even years worth of time spent on social media.
Yeah.
And I don't know about, because all three of us using social media to promote what we're doing. And I find it such a shame, because when I'm using social media and I'm posting the animal photos, it's because I want people to put their phone down and go and see these animals, because I believe if people go out to the wild, they see it, they feel good, they're going to fight to save it, and then the animals get the benefit, humans get the benefit. But I want them to go out there and put their phones down. It's such a weird paradox of using social media not to.
I have thought about that a lot. Like, am I being a hypocrite? But I think it kind of goes down to going to the place that people are in the most need, and the most depressed people are on Facebook. It's just kind of the way it is. And so you're fishing, like you're like, come with me out of here. And the idea, I hope, is that people will stop doing so much social media, and then they'll follow my email, and that I send like once a week, and then they can do the podcast that way, or that they'll subscribe to the workbook, or different ways of getting the information that once you pull them out of Facebook. So I don't think there's any, like, for example, if you are a mission necessarily to the most righteous parts of town, you're going to go to the dark, deep, people are struggling and they don't want to hear what you have to say, but you're going there because they need it. And you're hoping even to just one, can we just get one to better their life? And so I think if you look at Facebook that way, as it can be good or evil. It can be used for great good or great evil. And it's finding that balance.
What would you say the future will look like now for mental health and depression in general?
I think it's really up to every individual. We're in a society that is absolutely conducive to building mental chaos. And so you have to create something different, kind of push against the status quo, be the weird one who doesn't go along with what everybody else is doing, because frankly, what most people are doing isn't working. Most people are not thriving. And so if you care a lot about what people think, or you want to fit in, this isn't going to work. You're going to have to pull out. And I know that I believe personally that it will get to a point where you will be faced with the decision: do I want to be in this society that is controlling me and my mind and following my every move? Or do I go out into the wilderness, drop my phone and the Wi-Fi, and learn how to survive out there? I think that's what it's going to break down to. And then I don't know how long that's going to take, but I think decisions will have to be made. And it's going to be hard for a lot of people to disengage and make that choice, because it's so compelling, all of it. And to leave that behind would be very difficult for a lot of people. So, I mean, a lot of people can cope by drugging themselves up. That's fairly effective. But I also know that it reduces empathy. It makes you kind of, not a whole lot of joy, not a whole lot of feeling in general, not a whole lot of ick either, but you just don't feel much anymore. So if a lot of people, but then you put the people on the drugs and they stop caring. So then that makes it hard too. It's like, please care. And they're like, whereas when they're depressed, just authentically, organically depressed, there's some compelling reasons to at least try. Whereas when you numb everything down, it gets harder. And I think that's the challenge of what I'm trying to do. And I was talking with my husband about it the other day. I'm like, not a lot of people are listening to these podcasts. Like, I'm glad to help even just the one person. Like, I would do it for the one, but it's a little discouraging. I'm not going to lie. And he's like, well, you remember you were depressed once. Did you want to listen? Did you believe you could change? And I was like, no, not really. So it's kind of a hard group of people to affect initially, because a lot of them they're there because they have very discombobulated belief systems, that they're stubborn and maybe numbed down with drugs, and it's hard. They're a little hard to reach. But I think even those who are hard to reach, there's usually that moment where any person will get to a point of, I can't do this anymore. And that's kind of what you have to get to. Every single person gets there. If they don't, I mean, I suppose I believe in a life after life. I don't believe that after this life it's over for them, that they can't progress or heal. That's my personal belief. But I think it's easier to do it here, and it's a lot more rewarding, and you can have a much more joyful life. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. This is not the easy path. It takes a lot of sacrifice, but you can have challenge and still feel joy, if that makes sense, where you won't be happy all the time, but it's that peace and joy you're looking for that people aren't necessarily gravitating to, because they're so addicted to the things they have right now and they don't want to let it go. But any addict, and I'm talking addiction really broad here, will get to a point where they realize, I can't do this anymore. And it's kind of like, what does that take? What's that thing that will open them up, get them to wake up and decide that they have to change, and they have to change now. It's that decision that makes all the difference. So it's just getting a person to that point that is kind of the challenge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, a little deep.
No, it's just something, like it's I think from what you're saying there is, I think people will take it differently depending where they are in their life and what they may have suffered with and where they are in their journey. Like somebody who's right at rock bottom, like this could be like just saying that, but people can get through it and things like that. And then someone who's come out of it at the other end, I think that it can just hit people in other ways. And someone who's never had to experience the darkness of depression might make them more aware. And what I liked what you said was about, being that weirdo and owning it. I've always been the weird kid and the black sheep of my family, and being odd because I wasn't into what other people were into. I just wanted to be in the wild. And I'm 34 now, and it's just kind of, I've gone through therapy, and it's kind of, have you ever seen the film Hook? I love cultural references.
I love Hook. It's one of my favorite movies.
And I always think of this is he forgets he's Peter Pan, right? He's grown up and he's a lawyer. But through it, there's little snippets of the Peter Pan character. You see him like playing with the other lawyers, and then you see him standing with his hands on his hip, like how Peter Pan stands. But he's denying who he is. He's like, I don't believe in fairies and all of that. And then suddenly he has this moment, gets hit on the head by the ball, and he's and he's flying, and he has this little thing, and the kids are like, "Oh, I recognize you, Peter." And I've kind of, like, he's like what you said, we've gone into society, he's become the lawyer, I've done this job and become what people told me to be, and he's forgot the inner child who he was. And yeah, when I'm in the wild, that's me as Peter Pan. That's me flying, I am who I'm meant to be. And I just think people need that as well. And I don't know if nature's like that for everybody else, but everyone is.
I don't think any single person doesn't benefit from nature. I think for you, it's very obvious. It's very clear. It's very immediate. I don't think everyone is as sensitive, if that makes sense. Like they're getting benefits, but if they're not sensitive, and I want to use the word spiritually sensitive as well in this case, if that's not, if they're blocked or they don't value it or whatever it is, they're not recognizing the benefits, even if they're there. And I do think that some people are super uber sensitive to where they just don't function well with toxic environments. And it's just, I'm one of those bodies. My body is very loud with me when I don't treat it right. It's like I can't get away with much. But to me, it's a blessing because it keeps me honest. Like, no, Jennifer, don't do this. Whereas a lot of people who abuse their bodies for years and years and years on end, and they're like, I'm fine, I feel great, no problems here. They're often, not always, but often the ones who end up with chronic disease down the line, because your body can only take so much. So to me, I think it's a blessing when your body is telling you so loudly what it likes and doesn't like, especially where nature's concerned. I mean, that's it. When I made the correlation first with fish, and then I started food early, that was a big game changer for me. When you talk about the gut, that was kind of what came next, was healing my internal world, my gut. You were describing eating healthy and how wonderful you felt and it was probably because yours was more gradual and not so extreme, but when I dropped sugar cold turkey and I had a very limited diet to fix the issues I was having chronically, I wanted to die for like a solid 3 months. I did not feel good. I looked terrible. My body was screaming, like, so addicted to what I'd had before. When they say, oh, listen to your body, I was not in a place where I could listen to my body. It wanted all the stuff it shouldn't have. Okay. I am now. But when you're addicted to food, you can't listen to your body. So that can be something that some people go through is it doesn't feel good at first. You feel like you want to die, or you feel angry, or you're irritable because you're detoxing. So that can happen. You're not necessarily going to feel amazing when you start eating better. It can take some time. So just keep that in mind, I guess is all I'm saying.
And do you think that addiction applies to other things like to materialistic things? Like I don't know what iPhone we're on now, like the iPhone 9 or 10, whatever it is now, but like people queue up. Well, they release one like every 2 years or something. And they queue up for 24 hours camping. Like people say I'm crazy for camping in the Serengeti, and I'm like, well, you're camping in the street for an iPhone. And
I will never ever stand in the queue for a phone ever.
Like it
Never.
And I said, what does your new phone do? What's different to your old phone? Like it rings, and you might use a couple of like Facebook or apps or Amazon. And I remember there was a commercial. I was in a cinema and they had a commercial on for, I don't know, an iPhone or something like that. And it was a woman, and she was like doing like an art for a Marvel movie, the new Marvel movie out. And she was in like a Starbucks, and she's like, I'm doing this. And like, how many people are working on a Marvel movie where this is your commercial? There's not everybody's using their phone for a Disney $1 billion movie. Like, and I think people are addicted to the material things. Like, I've got to have the latest car. What does this? And the latest phone. What does this? And the latest. And I'm like, is that really? I just wonder if that's the addiction. What's also making people like ill is if they can't have that thing as well.
Well, I think it's just wanting something better all of the time. It's that lust, like just kind of addicted to what you don't have. It's a form of ingratitude that keeps you in a state of misery because whatever you have is never good enough. I mean, it will be for a little bit, but then when the new thing comes out, it's no longer good enough. I mean, I'm with you. Material things have never really enticed me. I'm a functionality, like whatever works, I'm good. I'm good with being different. I'm an Aquarius. That just kind of comes naturally to an Aquarian. They just don't care what people think. So that's easy for me. I can't quite get into the mindset of those who care so much because I'm not. Like, that's just not who I am. But I think it fascinates me for sure. I love looking into the psychology of those types of things. But I think any kind of, I mean, I just did have I done it yet? I don't think I've released it yet, but it's a podcast about how desire is the root of all suffering. And it's a Buddhist principle. And I didn't understand it for a really long time. I'm sure I still don't fully understand it, but for years I was mulling over this in my mind. Like, I don't get it, because if I want good things, isn't that good? I mean, right? Like, you want to do good things, you want to do charity, you want to help someone, that's good, right? But to say that desire is the root of all suffering, that's a pretty big claim. And what I
it's like sort of human nature, isn't it, to want more all the time, isn't it? Because like you say, like when you get like, I mean, I don't know, but I'm presuming when you get like the latest iPhone, it's like a quick release of dopamine or whatever it is, and then you're like, well, I've got it now. And then you sort of
and the anticipation
of waiting for the next one, isn't you?
Yeah, actually, the anticipation of the event. So the anticipation, if you know you're going to get a phone in a month, that produces more excitement and joy than the moment you get the phone. It's kind of like, oh, like every time you'll look forward to the thing. Christmas comes, and then okay, that's it, and then you're looking for the next high, right? So I think it's human nature. All we're really trying to do is feel better. That's what drives humanity pretty much all the time, ever. You're trying to feel better.
Back to sort of the environment and nature as well, because we, especially with human nature, we're constantly, like I said, wanting more. So like more and more people are wanting more and more profit, or more land, or more whatever. And that's where sort of, your deforestation, your sort of oil companies and stuff like that come into it, because they just constantly want more and more. But like, I don't know if we're more the same, but when you've got a certain amount and you're happy, a lot of us don't want to continue to get more stuff that we don't want, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I bought a very small house. You can't fit as much in this house as you could in most houses. And I think that's a good thing. It kind of forces me to monitor what I have.
Yeah.
I still think I have more than I need, and I stuff things in all kinds of places, but
What we'll do is we'll just play a couple of animal sounds for you. And do you mind if you can see if you can identify them for us?
We're just going to leave this like on a high after talking about depression. So I recorded some sounds. Ryan hasn't heard them yet either, so let me know.
I'll help you if you get stuck.
So. Can you guess that one?
is it like a sea lion or something?
You got it. You got it.
Really?
Yeah. Well
Oh
done.
my gosh.
The next one.
Killer whale?
Sorry.
Was it a killer whale?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, and I recommend going underwater and listen to them. This one is a tricky one.
Is it a bird or a fish, or like mammal fish?
It's a mammal.
Give me a clue. Is that underwater too?
No, it's a mammal.
Okay. So it sounds like a bird. Is it your cockatiel?
No. It's actually a cat, a species of cat.
Oh.
It's a cheetah.
Oh, you said mammal. Hello. Mammals are not birds. It's been a while since I've categorized animals.
No, that was a cheetah. This one is very unique. Sounds like a machine gun.
Yeah. Is it an anteater?
Even I don't know that one. I couldn't quite grasp that one.
There's a bird from Africa called the shoebill. It's a very big bird.
Oh.
Huge bill, and it makes a machine gun noise when it walks. And this one is I found quite interesting.
Yeah. Lost cause to begin with. I don't remember the last time I heard of a shoebill.
So that one there was a electric eel. This one you might recognize. My neighbors.
Okay, so mammal or
That's a bird.
okay.
Quite a fancy bird as well.
Peacock?
You got it. You got it.
Oh.
And this one I love. It reminds me. I give you clues in Africa.
Is it like Pumbaa pig?
Sorry.
The Pumbaa pig from The Lion King?
Oh, you're very close. It's one of the ugly five. You got it, Ryan?
I just love the way you've said it's the puma thing.
That one.
By the way, that's what people in Africa call it, is Pumbaa. They call it Pumbaa when you're in Africa.
Yeah.
So that was a wildebeest.
Wildebeest, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And this one, let me see if you can get this one. This is the last one.
Okay. Oh, that's a donkey of some kind.
Sorry?
Is it a mandarin or a chimp? Like that.
You're saying chimpanzee, Ryan?
Is that a hyena?
No, it's me.
Good one.
I'm the Dr. Dolittle name, so.
That was fun. Thanks for that game. Yay.
No worries at all.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And for, I loved your questions. Enjoyed being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take care now.
Take care.
Talk next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Cool. Wonderful. Oh, she's gone.
Yeah.
Right, let me end recording.